Growing up in the 80s in the United States, one of the movies that influenced me in many different sort of fun ways, romantic ways, all kinds of different things, was Say Anything with John Cusack. And he had this great, his character Lloyd Dobler had a fabulous quote that to this day I still sort of try to keep as my mantra in many ways in the back of my mind, which is, and I'm reading it here just to make sure I don't get it wrong. I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything bought or processed, or buy anything sold or process anything sold, bought, or processed, or repair anything sold, bought, or processed. As a career, I don't want to do that. And I cannot stress how much that has become sort of like a central thing. You could say that art can be part of that, but I don't believe that being creative and making things fits into that, because I'm not buying anything, I'm not processing. I mean, you could say I'm processing things, but as a conceptual idea, it's a great foundation for a creative career. And I mean, in many ways, it set me up to be fun and creative and unique, but in many ways it also sort of conceptually closed many opportunities for me. I could have been really good at a number of things that I simply chose not to do. Like I talked about being a waiter, and when the guy offered me to be a manager, he fired me because I didn't want to be a manager. Had I wanted to be a manager of a diner, then I could have been very successful at that. But it all comes back to this idea that these days, with social media and the arts and everything, and even the history of sort of sales in the arts, the idea of making art is intertwined with the idea that is very popular in social media these days of selling the dream. And that's an interesting sort of turn of phrase, because many times we have the dream of being great artists. I certainly do. I have the dream that someday one of my works of art will be in the annals of art history as an example of a particular time period, style, or movement. That would be amazing. I mean, given that will probably happen after my death, I will never personally see it, but it would be a great legacy to have. That being said, during my lifetime, I have to try and find ways to create that dream. Like it's funny. When I was in undergraduate school at the University of Iowa, I remember there's this guy, I think it was Brian, and he and I used to have these ongoing debates about what makes art and all this. And one of his questions was, if you make the most magnificent piece of art and never show it to anybody, did it matter? Was it the most magnificent piece of art in all of art history? And the idea is that basically art is for others as much as it is for the artist. So like you want to make things, I want to make things that I feel sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate, engaged, whatever word you want to use, with the work itself. But you also need to balance that with some ability to engage of the public and the viewer, because if they don't care about your work, then, well, that's it. It's sort of dead on arrival. Like you have to take into consideration, and it can be offered in additional ways. A lot of times artists, especially in the 21st century, will offer some context through their text that they add to it, the title of it, something else like that, to offer a leg in. And in many ways that's magnificent, but in many ways that's kind of a crutch. It's sort of like, I can't actually get you to care or engage with this thing, so I'm going to give you a 10-page treatise about why it is you should care about this thing, which is all fine and good. And it's just really hard, because I've been finding myself having to write a lot of artist statements and a lot of things to try to convince people to like or engage in either me as an artist or my work. And that is a struggle that we all go through, is like, how do you sell the dream? How do you convince somebody who doesn't give a crap about your work to give a crap about your work, but not even just give a crap, actually want to invest their resources as a granting organization, or given an opportunity as a residency, or physically buying the item and wanting to put it into their home or office or wherever they're going to put it. This is an ongoing sort of struggle slash dilemma slash because slash just like struggle, because we not only, like, I wrote artist statements starting back in, I think, like 1993. And an artist statement I wrote in 1993 would not go over well in 2024. And equally so, an artist statement that I write now in 2024 would not go over well in 1993. So it's not even just like having a good artist statement, but it's continuing to evolve the artist statement over time to evolve your understanding of your work and its place in the art sort of a lexicon. And that's really, really hard, because personally, I find that when I'm making my work, I am so engaged in the process of it, the thought behind it, the expressing of the concept behind it, that I don't really have the distance, the separation, the ability to be objective, because I'm very subjective about my own work. And it's that objectivity that is necessary to be able to simply look at work and try and fit it into the whatever, the lexicon of the arts in that time period. And so a lot of time it takes just time and distance. And like, I find that generally 5 to 10 years after I'm done with making work, I have a full grasp and understanding of why I made that work at that time and in that place and with those resources, etc. And so it's really hard, because a lot of contemporary art is going out and trying to sell the dream, sort of, get people engaged in your work while you're making it, even though you don't necessarily know why you're making it at this point. I keep saying you. I should be saying me. I don't know why I'm making it. I'm making it because it's the thing I need to make. And that's pretty much it. It's the thing that will quiet the demons in my head. It's the thing that will, satiate my need for creation. It's not something that I'm sitting here going, oh, you know what? I know that the buyers are looking for a thing that looks like this, so I'm going to make a thing that looks like that because it will be an easy sell. That is not how I think. And maybe some people do think that way. Good for them. They're probably far better business people than I am, because I just don't think like a business person in that way. I'm aware of how that business people think that way, but that's not my way. And if you're listening to me talk here, I'm sure that you probably think the same way. But the nature of like just having to sell the dream, especially these days with social media, is very, very difficult. And because there's this sped up expectation of being able to understand the place that your work has in the world, that for many decades, if not centuries, was not really the role of the artist. And that's one of those things that, because of social media, how do I explain this? Okay. Back in the day, it was the job of a curator or a job of a gallerist to be able to contextualize artists' works. Artists, we're so busy making work that we don't take the time to say, influenced by this, relevant to that, building on the history of this movement and all these kinds of things. This is not something that we focused on. We as artists were making the work. And then we would hand it over to a curator and or a gallerist, and it would be their role to find out or figure out from their expertise and their experiences where the artwork fits into the lexicon of the arts industry, whether that's museum exhibitions, galleries, sales, collections, these kinds of things. Like that was their role. It was not our role as artists to put ourselves or even be as arrogant as to for us to think that we can choose where we fit into the lexicon. Like it's incredibly arrogant of us to think that we have this entitled role because social media has been created, that we're now be able to place ourselves in the realm of influenced by, part of a movement, anything like this, where for centuries it was the role of curators and gallerists to make these kinds of judgment calls. I kind of like the way it was, because like there's the long-standing story of like a lot of artists, creative people will say, I'm a photographer, as their own definition of themselves, and somebody else might say, well, I think you're an artist. And the point is that like being called an artist is very different from calling yourself an artist. If you call yourself an artist, that's kind of arrogant, because you are elevating yourself where traditionally it was somebody else. It was them, it was they, it was somebody with some expertise, some information, some knowledge, some professional whatever, that they designated works of art or artists as people to be elevated to the status of being artists and artwork. Prior to that, it's more or less the equivalent of like craft. A photographer who does stock photography, because I've mocked stock photography before, they're craftsmen. They're not artists. But if it has been elevated to the point of being in a museum, which means it was chosen by a curator, that curator has deemed it as art, which is a longer conversation that I'll have some other time about the differentiation between craft art and fine art. But today it's about selling the dream. We all have the dream, but the problem is how to express that dream to the viewing public, buying public, curatorial public, whatever, in a manner that they will engage with, appreciate, fund, give opportunities to us. And I'm saying this through my own experiences, being in job applications, being residency applications, grant funding applications, whatever it is. It's hard to try to put yourself, because what you have to do is it's basically marketing. And as much as I hate that idea that not only do we have to create work, but we have to come up with a marketing plan to market our work, and then we actually have to fulfill that marketing plan. This is all stuff that, like when I chose to go into the creative fields, I said, I don't want to do these things. I'm Lloyd Dobler. I don't want to sell things, process bought and sold things. Like, I just want to make things. But because of this day and age, I have to also be an expert at marketing. And I have fought against this for years, primarily because my expectations of my career was to be in the academic world, to be a full-time teacher at some point, or at this point in my career. And I am not currently full-time. And so I've got to be in the trenches with the artist doing the work, and which is fine, except for the fact that the industry has shifted and I have not kept up with it. So I need to get up with the industry. And as much as I sound like an old curmudgeon sitting here going like, well, in the old days, it was blankety blank. When I was a kid, bang, bang. It's something that I have to get over, because the old days are the old days and they do not exist anymore, and that I have to accept that and move forward. And if I want to be part of the arts industry in the 21st century, these are the realities that I have to participate in. So trying to construct that marketing narrative to engage people is a thing that in this day and age, it necessitates vulnerability. People, viewers, participants in art and in the art industry, they want to feel connected. They want to feel associated with, related to, empathetic, friendly even to artists. And I'm a very private person. I know it doesn't seem like I am because I share a lot on this channel, but I'm a very private person about my emotions. And the thing is that much of the artwork in the world right now that is connecting with the viewing public is rooted in strong emotional associations and emotional impact, whether that's making work that's ecologically relevant to somebody's ecological mindset, or whether that's making work that is gender based. What would that be referred to? Not gender based, sexual orientation based, religious based, regional. People connect with these things, and it's one of the parts that's really hard, because anytime you define your work, or anytime I define my work as something, I also close other opportunities. So like if I say, oh, my work is about white American 50-something-year-old man's impression of blankety blank, I have just closed the door on any number of other variations of people's interests that they will no longer be interested in my work. And that's difficult, because I do, and I'm sure you do, we all sit down and we make work and we go, I want this work to be able to be sort of generic enough that anybody can engage in it, but yet specific enough that people truly emotionally connect with it. And that is really hard. Nearly impossible, quite honestly. But yet we all strive for it, and we all fail miserably at it. I fail miserably at it quite often, but that doesn't stop us from trying. I envy people who do things like potters and even glass makers and things like this, who can make utilitarian things like, dishes, pots, coffee mugs, glasses, things like this, that, a strong majority of a society will appreciate and utilize. That is very different from making a fine art piece that basically is part of an elitist hierarchy of people, because they have to have the space, they have to have the money, then they have to have the understanding and appreciation of something and its value. So this is really hard. It's really tedious and difficult to go through a life being a creative person. And that's what makes selling art on the internet one of the most difficult things, because you're trying to connect emotionally with the public through an emotionless medium. It's very, very hard to get emotions expressed and then empathized through the internet. Yeah, people can do it, but it takes a certain craftsman to be able to do it. And it's not one of those things, especially when you make just like visual art. people are not going to look at a painting that you've created and just start crying when they see it on Instagram. They're gonna cry because they read the context, the stuff below it that gives it a weightier impact on them. And that's the hard part, is because we as artists, we were trained to make really strong art. We were not trained to write eloquently about our work in a manner that will connect effectively with the viewers. And maybe some people were trained in that. I wasn't trained in that. So just to be clear, would I teach my students that? Yes, absolutely. Because as I said, the art world has evolved, and that is a necessary part of the process. So trying to find a way to get people to empathize with your viewpoint, sympathize, engage with, whatever word you want to put to it, to your your thing you're trying to explain or offer to the viewers in your work, is of the utmost importance. The days of just like making amazing art and putting it on the wall and expecting people to just love it is long past. It probably didn't even exist in my lifetime, but it's a very hard thing to do. And so I'm sitting here trying to figure out, how can I market my art? Here's the one that kills me. What makes my work so damn special that somebody who searches the entire World Wide Web is going to choose my work to be the thing that they want to purchase and experience and live in their home or their office or wherever they have it? What makes me that special, unique snowflake, that I am the chosen one? I have no idea how to do that, because of the subjectivity of the medium. Just flat out subjectivity. Like, no matter what, it's always going to be this way. And this makes this really, really hard, because like if somebody makes a product, so let's say in the business world, they make a product. Generally, products are one of two things: either they fill a gap in the world, or they're literally like manifesting some new resolution to a problem that exists in life. So it could be higher quality, something that's been produced for centuries, or a brand new thing of that sort of problem solves something that is a modern problem that maybe wasn't a problem 100 years ago. There's some amount of necessity. There's some amount of efficiency, effectiveness, or even just appreciation. Like, oh, I really love the way the design of this makes my desk look, because it fits with the style and the motif of my office. Whereas a painting or a piece of art that is hung in your office or your home is very subjective. I mean, my mother was an interior decorator, and she, as much as it pains me, she literally would choose pieces of art that matched the curtains, so like it kind of didn't matter what the subject was or whether anybody appreciated it or liked it or engaged with it. They were just trying to find something that had a similar motif to the rest of the room, and also the colors matched the other rest of the color palette in the room. And while I understand that, because to a certain extent I still do that in my own living room, it pains me as an artist, because like I want the art to be this focus of the room, and then the room be matched to come together around the piece of art. Sadly, modern society goes the other way around. You get your television first, and then your sofa, and then from there you'll get your curtains and your art, if there's even any room for art after the large television that you've put in the living room. So it's one of those things, like, how do you, in this day and age, how do you get past all of that to get people to want to buy my artwork? Like the individual, like there's one thing to say like, oh, people want to buy art. Okay, great. They can go to Walmart, IKEA, Bed Bath & Beyond. But what makes them buy original artwork, A, which of course is going to be higher priced than all those other options, and B, how do you get them to find your work from all the work that exists on the entire internet? Because like if I type it in any of the unique words that I can think of that would describe my work, 1,000 other artists would probably show up before I would. So it's that learning that capability, not just even learning it, but maintaining that capability and evolving with the capability of not just making quality work, not just being able to write a text that sort of entices and seduces buyers, but also having to keep up with the technology of search engine optimization in order to make it so that when a potential buyer of artwork is looking for art, then they will actually find your work over the hundreds of thousands or millions of other work that exist on the internet. You know, as I'm saying this, like I remember I built websites for going on 20 some years now, and I remember the days when search engine optimization kind of was a lot easier in many ways because it was pretty straightforward. But these days there are so many unique algorithms that work in contrast to each other that sort of don't make it easy to be able to use search engine optimization. I mean, for God's sakes, it's possible that a lot of people don't even have websites anymore. A lot of people just have Instagram profiles. So, you know, saying that makes it really difficult, because if you only have social media profiles as your way of connecting with viewers, there's almost no way they can find. There's no search engine that will find that. But is a search engine what's important? Is it a search engine for trying to find your work on a website, or should you be focusing, or should I be focusing my attention on trying to make the search engine searchability of my work on social media my priority? So like, should I be putting hashtags and all kinds of other things to make it so that has more credibility? I don't know the answer, and I would love to hear some feedback and input from you all about how, what has worked for you and why, because I'm all about trying to figure out this problem instead of complain about it and gripe about it. There's got to be a solution. I've dwelled on it and wallowed in it for many years, and basically I've gotten to a point where it's just like, fuck it, I've got to participate in it. I cannot sit here and just say like, the industry has changed so much and I don't understand how it works. Well, you know what? My role as an artist is to evolve and grow and evolve with the industry instead of fighting to try and have it the way I want it. I actually have to meet it, I'll call it meet it halfway, and try my best to get in there and be a part of it instead of complaining about the fact that, the cool kids aren't letting me into the clique.